Okay, hey, we are back, and we're actually pretty fired up here. We've just been talking about some great topics.
Yeah.
I have the great Bob Turchiarelli with me this evening, and we're primed up for a great conversation about some men's topics. And the thing that's actually firing us up right now, aside from our talk about the church, is a little bourbon here. It's a little Knob Creek, and boy, it's just hitting right. It's been a long day. I'm ready to get into it. For those of you who don't know Bob is my brother-in-law.
That's right.
I married a sister, and boy, that in-law thing is kind of like in parentheses because, I mean, dude, you're my bro. And we've had some great experiences together. And, you know, I mean, you were in my wedding party, and I was in yours. On top of that, we've done Exodus 90 together. We've been on retreat together in a few different fashions.
Yeah.
And incredible man of faith, accountant by trade, musician by wonder. I mean, every music thing that you touch is like, it's like, oh, piano, no problem. Drums, boom. Guitar, got it.
Working on the banjo.
Working on a banjo. I mean, he's got it. So just glad to be able to sit down today and talk about it. We're going to get into some pretty cool things, so I hope you stick around for this one. This is going to be a great conversation. It always is, because we always get into the deep stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think tonight is certainly going to be one of those. So thanks for tuning in here. If this is something that you are enjoying, hey, share it, pass it to somebody who you think should hear this, because I think every good man should be hearing good masculine conversations. Mm-hmm. And I think that this is certainly one of those priming grounds where I think men could really tune in. And I hope it encourages you, because you can have this in your life. This isn't something that just, you know, this isn't staged. This is the type of conversation that we actually have often. And it's a good thing to have with your friends, right? With your family, to be able to jump into this. So hopefully this is just a good moment to kind of, hey, hear through with us, but maybe consider applying this into your own life. Be bold about it. If you're like, hey, I don't know how to have this conversation, the best way is to sit down with a little bourbon and just crack it open with somebody. You know, pick a friend, pick a family member, sit them down and say, hey, how you doing? Right? And when you ask the question, how are you doing? Like, don't accept the cheap answer. Don't just be like, oh, I'm good. I'm all right. Dig in, right? And they'll be like, how are you actually doing? Mm-hmm. I feel like Sarah Saltarelli here. How are you?
Yeah.
What is your dream?
How are you really?
Yeah, how are you really? Those questions are powerful. So just want to encourage you to ask those. And so, Bob, how are you doing?
Well, I'm doing well. I'm very tired lately. The days are getting shorter, as you know. And I'm coming off of a really strong month of August, which we're going to talk about, the Iron Ore retreat. I was getting up early, not only to do my morning prayer routine, but to I was started going for runs, which I hate running. I don't enjoy it at all. But knowing that we were going to be doing Mount Marcy, I was thinking to myself, I want to get ready for this. I want to prepare, and it seemed like the best, easiest, quickest way to get the legs loose and get me primed for it. So, and that was huge. The energy that I got for the whole day, from morning till night, from just starting the day off with a run, it was like a night and day difference. My mood improved dramatically. My wife can attest to this. And I just had this energy that I was missing for a little while. You know, when you get out of the exercise routine, you feel it, and diet too. It's it'll wear on you, especially like as you start to get older. So so now with it being this dark out in the morning when I was usually doing my runs. Usually it was like around early sunrise. I had some light. So I haven't been running since. So it like getting up in the morning and just still being dark out. It's been a quick change, but as far as physically, yeah, I've been tired, but I'm doing really well, and yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All the good stuff. So you were prepping for the retreat.
Yeah.
And we've been on retreats before. You've been on retreats before. You've been up to the Adirondacks. First time that you've come on one of the iron ore ones, it was so good having you. What led you into the mountains? What was the experience like for you?
Yeah.
And what's your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, so this was my first iron ore retreat, as you know. And for most of the year, I knew you guys were doing Marcy, but I thought, I don't think I'm going to go. I hadn't been on one yet. And not that it's not appealing to me. I love hiking. I love the Adirondacks, but it just never, usually what it was is that because we camped there every year in August for a week. So I come back, and then usually it would be like the weekend after, and I'm like, nah, I'm good. I was just there. But it wasn't until, I'm really like in July, I started really, something just hit me, and I'm like, Mount Marcy. Yeah, this is an opportunity. I was almost selfish about it. And I try to avoid being selfish as much as I can. But I'm like, this is an opportunity and I want this. Like so I talked to Mary about it and I said, this is a great opportunity to climb the tallest peak in New York with great men. And I want to go for it. And she's like, okay, do it. So, and then from there, I just got real excited. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to run. Like, I'm going to really, I went all in, and I never, it almost seemed kind of silly cause I've climbed mountains before. I climbed in Colorado and it was nothing new, but something about this, I'm like, I want to be at my best for this, and the fruits of that were really, I still feel it. Like now, I see a huge difference it made, even just in the preparation for it. But, so that's what really drew me in to the retreat, was just, this is an opportunity to, it almost seemed too simple for me because, you know me, I'm real intentional with what I do. And usually there's like a deeper meaning behind it. But I'm like, no, I want to climb this thing with some dudes. So, and I don't think I'm the only guy who probably got called into it through that. It's, as men, we're called to adventure and called to a challenge. And this was going to be it. This was going to be the longest and tallest peak that I had climbed as far as like elevation gain and distance. So I did Mount LeConte, which one of your guests on one of the other episode, he mentioned Mount LeConte also, which I did that, and that was with my cousin. And yeah, so just looking to up the ante. So that's what drew me in.
So tell me about that one, because that was an adventure for sure.
Yeah. Have you done it? Or?
No, I haven't, but I remember hearing your story of it, getting up there, because that was an unexpected challenge, right? Especially at that elevation.
Yeah, so it's in the Smoky Mountains, and the day before we flew in, my cousin Dan and I, and we played 2 full rounds of disc golf. A lot of walking, and their courses are a lot longer. The holes are a lot longer than like Chestnut Ridge, which I'm used to here. So I'd been we did 2 rounds, and my feet were killing me, and I was like sore from that. And we get up the next day, and I'm still sore. I'm like, I'm gonna do the tallest mountain of my life today. Like, I was praying, and I had my rosary in my pocket when we started, because I'm like, Lord, I actually have no idea how I'm about to do this. So, it's a long one. It's got a nice break in the middle with sort of like a cave, which I think I forget his name, but he mentioned that little break halfway through. And some people just only go that far and then they come back down. But it's my cousin Nick's favorite hike because of just the different terrain changes. Like at one point you feel like you're in a rainforest, the next it's open rock, The next you're near a cave. It's a lot of changes. It's very scenic, and I really enjoyed it. And we didn't take many breaks. We flew to the top, and that actually probably worked out better for me, that we just kept moving. And so they dragged me a little bit. There were a couple times I had to stop them, but yeah, that was a really great, because that was for my cousin Nick's bachelor weekend. So it was a little guy's outing before he got married. So it was special. Yeah. So.
Yeah. There's something about being out there when you have that challenge that, like you're really feeling it.
Yeah.
Getting whooped.
Yeah.
And you got to push yourself through it. That really gets you in the zone of like squaring up life. Mm-hmm. And I feel like every time I'm out on these peaks, I'm not in my peak shape. I'm doing some prep. Like especially this past year when I did white-faced for the test run, I was wearing sneakers. Mm-hmm. I put zero prep. I was like, I'm just going to go hit it.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was it was brutal, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to have some sort of prep going into it. Mm-hmm. And then once you're out there, you get real square of this is hard.
Yeah.
Especially if you're underprepared. Mm-hmm. This is hard. Now, how am I going to get through it? How am I going to get to the end of it? And you just have to do it one step at a time. And
yeah.
You're winded. You're tired. Your legs are giving out. Okay, we'll keep going. And it's just like in life, because how many times are you preparing for life when something hits you and then you're weak in the knees, you're tired, you're fatigued, you feel like you don't have it anymore. And it really teed up the rest of the series when I was on Whiteface. And we got wiped out at the top, mm-hmm. near the top, by the storm. And it forced us down. And I'm like, man, I remember hitting the bottom. Being like, I never want to be underprepared like this again. And I wasn't even just talking about the mountain, mm-hmm. but I was talking about life too. I'm like, I don't want to be underprepared for life. Like, I want to be in shape to be able to handle anything. Like I want to make sure I have proper boots. I want to make mm-hmm. sure that, I have a game plan for if it storms. I need to think this thing through.
Yeah.
And I knew that's what I was in pursuit of going into the mountains for doing a series like this. But until you actually get caught fatigued, until you get underprepared and you get your butt kicked once in a while, like you
need it.
You need it. You don't know it.
Yeah.
Because how do you know what you're going to prepare for if you don't realize what you've been hit with?
Yeah.
Now, you had something like that when you were in the Rockies too, right?
Oh, man. 14,000 feet. Started at 11,000. The worst pain I've ever experienced. All up here, just pounding. And I was miserable at the top. I had to crawl on my hands and knees to get to the top. Once again, praying Hail Marys, just on repeat, just, Blessed Mother, get me to the top. I made it, and you'd think, yeah. And sure, we smiled for the picture, but both of us were just beaten. And then all I'm thinking is, I just want to go down. And I can't believe I have to go down. But looking back on it, it's like, man, but I did it though. Like, and I'll always have that. You always have that. Like, I did it. I achieved it. It wasn't easy. It wasn't a walk in the park, but I mean, sometimes we forget that in life. Like, it's really hard. Like, it's really hard life, and there's good moments like sprinkled throughout, and but it's hard, and you got to be prepared for the battles, because that was something that in this retreat I went on recently, like, we have a battle to fight in life. There's no avoiding it. It's coming for you. So you got to be prepared. Yeah. Physically, mentally, and spiritually. So yeah. And with that is the preparing yourself to be unprepared, mm-hmm. Cause there's things coming that you don't see coming, and you can't worry about them. Like, that was my biggest thing, like, constantly, like, what's it going to be? And it can really paralyze you. But, yeah, part of it is being prepared for the unexpected, and, mm-hmm. Knowing the tools you have in the toolkit, even in those moments where you feel ill-equipped. Well, what do I have? What can I use? Well, I could keep moving, keep taking a step up this mountain. got some water, got some snacks, just use what you got, use it all up and you'll make it. And we know we've made it. So yeah.
That exertion, at least in my own life, like I'm not exerting 100% all the time to my fullest, because there's the normal, like, all right, I'm giving a go. Mm-hmm. But then there's I really need to turn it up.
Yeah.
And I really, because if I'm not going to do this, if I'm not going to show up and give beyond what my normal comfort zone is, then it's not going to get done. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to get there. I want to be defeated. And nothing is more testing to that than being out on the mountain, right? Because, yeah, you've got your normal comfort, right? Like, okay, I go down to the gym, down the street. I've got my routine. I've got my incremental goals. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. That's not pushing me, right? And I don't have a coach at the gym that's like driving me hard. Mm-hmm. I don't need to. I'm kind of in maintenance mode with that. And I feel like in maintenance mode physically leads to maintenance mode mentally, emotionally. Mm-hmm. And that's why, especially after that test run, I knew I had to measure up. I'm like, I have to really exert myself on this next one.
Yeah.
And that next one with Whiteface, I was training, I was pushing hard, and I wanted to make sure that I was prepared for anything on that mountain. And by the time I got on that mountain, okay, I was tired, but I wasn't exhausted. I knew I was throwing, like, the preparation was already there, so now I was prepared for the challenge. Mm-hmm. So taking some of this from the mountain, right, that analogy, how would you prepare yourself for the hard stuff in life?
Well, there's a lot of it comes from taking chances, taking risks, and then even the times where you fall flat, being able to, prayer is really is the short answer. Being able to contemplate and look at your experiences in life, times where you fell short, times where you were humbled, times you were weakened. And for me, I would say inviting the Lord into that to show me, like, well, first of all, to remind me that I'm loved through it, which we forget a lot. That you're loved through that, and that you do have what it takes to, you have what it takes because someone's got your back, and that you're not alone, even when the hardships come. But I don't know, for me, like, just looking back at my life, because one of the things you said, like, how have you been hardened by hard things? That was one of the questions from the retreat, which I really liked, because all of us have an answer to that as men. We have things that have happened that have hardened us and made us stronger. Not all of them have been easy, and a lot of them have knocked us flat. But yeah, just being able to. Another thing is to be gentle with yourself too. Like, don't let your weaknesses really define you and make you into something that you're not. Because I've done that a lot. That was one of the things that I had to shed when I did Exodus 90 is just like this self-pity and loathing a lot. Looking in the mirror and just not seeing a guy who's capable of handling what's out there. So you're talking about preparing for, like, the hard things in life. Part of it too is knowing that there's things coming that I don't even see yet, but knowing that God's already present in those struggles, and just invite him in. It's one of the things that, when, for men especially, as we try to go it alone, that's when we really fall, and we fall hard. And that was a thing for me. Like, I really try to go it alone. a lot of the times, and those are the times where I'm at my lowest. But we have to be able to welcome people in. For our spouses, invite them in. Our brothers, getting together with guys, kind of like what you said at the beginning, and taking the time to really talk things out. Like, how are you doing? What's when we share our struggles with each other, it makes us stronger. It really, and it's the last thing you want to do, especially when you're young and you're growing up. You don't want to show your weaknesses to anybody, and you don't want to open yourself up to ridicule and criticism. But it's amazing because even our Lord, Jesus, he opened himself up completely. He made himself vulnerable. And why should he have to? He's God, but he did. He opened himself up, became vulnerable. He allowed himself to be even misunderstood and misinterpreted, which is it's one of my fears. I hate if I'm ever I'm trying to really say something that I feel and it's not getting through, but it's something that has made a huge difference in my life, is learning how to be vulnerable, learning how to be gentle with myself and not so condemning, and inviting other people in, and especially God into the struggles that I've encountered up to this point, and then being prepared to welcome him in, because he'll be there, but you got to let him in for the stuff that's down the road. So I would say, yeah.
I think that vulnerability is a heck of a mountain. One of the things I'm actually pretty proud of with our generation, and I'm seeing a lot more of this than I have with my father's generation, of that vulnerability of opening up oneself for another man, right? And maybe that's something that happens with the spouses, right? But even with that generation, I think that's even hard to come by.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've been seeing, especially in the midst of a lot of these men's groups, whether it's Exodus or Forged or Iron Ore, is to be able to have that opportunity to be able to open up a little bit more. And I know I say this all the time, and it's true for just about every men's group, that proverb of iron sharpens iron. There's so much wisdom in that.
Mm-hmm.
And scriptures are laced with that. But to be able to do that means you have to allow yourself to be sharpened.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just
got to be exposed,
you do. And that's a scary thing to do,
mm-hmm.
I think, for men to be able to open up like that. But there's so much growth and strength that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
Because then all of a sudden you're removing impurities from the mix, right? Whether you're talking about the impurities of what love brings and lust, whether it is the impurities of pride or the impurities of what fear can do to you. There's so many different layers to that if you're not opening yourself up in a way that you need to chisel up, then you're never going to remove that stuff.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, to do that alone, it grows and festers.
Yeah.
So when you have yourself in that situation, right, and you're kind of that lone wolf, and you're kind of, I got to keep that stoic front and just keep that internal stuff in here. What do you think is the best step forward from that? How do you get out of that spot?
Well, for me, I didn't find it till I did Exodus 90. And to me, what I would say more about that is it was finding brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to plug Exodus. I will if you want me to, but...
Well, let's go into Exodus, because I think that there is a lot of strength, and then there's a time away from that. But let's... I pulled the book out for Pete's sakes.
One of the things is that when I did Exodus 90 is I was exposed to some great men. I forget the one, his name, he moved away, but there was, I don't know if he moved to... Waldo. Where is Waldo?
Where is Walt?
We need you, man. I hope you're watching, but
it's a great question.
Yeah.
You moved out west.
Yeah.
I haven't heard from him since.
His witness as a man really affected me. He was vulnerable and he was strong, and he really hammered home spiritual warfare. Like,
yeah, I didn't even realize you brought that in here.
Which I never really thought about at great length up until Exodus, when he presented it and said, guys, this is real. This is a battle, and you're either going to win or you're going to lose it. And the only way you're going to win it is with Christ at your back. So like, he just brutally honest. Yeah. Almost like an older brother, just be like, this is how it is. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to tell you what's what.
He was a tough dude.
Yeah.
I mean,
but what you need, what men need, what I needed, because that was a huge part of what changed me. And it's inspired me. Like, once you find it, you want to give it yourself. I want to now pour it out to other men too. Not because I'm perfect or got it figured out, but I've tasted what it's like to be around men who are willing to share and talk about real things. Not just about football, not just about cars, but just real things of the heart. Stuff that, for whatever reason, growing up, or maybe for a time, it was like, yeah, that's not really what guys, like, that's not what guys are, the cutesy stuff, or the, talking about our feelings and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I think we got that wrong. And what's happened is we have a lot of men now who are emotionally wrecked because they don't know what to do. They don't know where to go, because it's like, I'm going to go sit in a circle and talk to other guys. And I'm not proposing that, but you need brothers. You need to find men in your life. And that might be hard for some guys, but if you can't find it, then try to start it. Try to, go to your church and talk to a priest, or find some church with a priest that you feel like you could talk about. Say, I want to get something started at a church, like, make it happen. Because that's the other thing as guys we're made to do is to make it happen. We're called to that adventure. But that's what made the difference, is to be around great men. And you know them when you see them, because they speak in a way that just, it shakes you. It draws you in. It's attractive, but it also shakes you to your core. Like, I'm in the presence of a guy who's experienced things. He's been in battle. He's gone through stuff, and he's not holding back, and he's letting you know it. So that's my hope, is to become that kind of man. I think that's every man's longing, is to be that kind of a man who can be that witness to other men, and to also be strong for the women in our lives too, for our wives and for our daughters. Like, when you don't have that, man, you feel like nothing, like you got nothing. So
I love this book. I actually have this in my bag right now.
Yeah. Every guy, everybody should.
Yeah, really.
Who feels drawn to it anyway.
So this is the Manual for Spiritual Warfare, Paul Thigpen. And what's awesome about this is it lays out very concisely the spiritual battle, and draws from Scripture, draws from the saints, draws from some great insights here on how to fight the enemy. Now, there's a lot that goes into that battle. You go back to Ephesians 6, that lays out that what we see in front of us isn't a battle of flesh and blood, right? This isn't just a me versus you type of a thing, but there's so many bigger things that are happening. Mm-hmm. And those bigger things are spiritual in nature, that it's with powers and principalities, things that we can't comprehend on a human scale, because it's easy to say, okay, well, there's something else going on here, but it's like Israel and Hamas right now, right? That isn't just a human type of engagement. Yeah. There's a lot of spiritual forces at work in the midst of all this. And
you can almost say it starts in the spirit and then it becomes real and physical. So, I mean, for a guy, if you're not taking it serious in the spiritual sense, it's going to start to wreck you in the real world, in the physical. So, yeah.
And this is why your prayer life is important. Because if you're not investing in your relationship with God, then you're going to be underprepared for the mountain at hand.
You don't even see it.
You don't even see it. You're going to be walking in your sneakers on a rough trail that is just only going to get harder. And if you don't have the right equipment, if you don't have the right preparation, then you're going to be underprepared for it. You're going to fail. And I think the beautiful thing about being in a group like Exodus, right? And we went through Exodus that first year. We had just a great group with that. For those of you who don't know what Exodus 90 is, I mean, it's just a powerful 90-day, essentially a retreat through asceticism in the book of Exodus 90. There's a lot of disciplines through it, but the spiritual growth through that, in the connection with a fraternity was life-changing. And I highly recommend it. I wouldn't recommend doing it every year, or, I think there's a season to be able to enter into it.
It's worth doing at least once and going all in.
All in.
It's 3 months out of a year, out of the scope of your life, out of the scope of eternity.
Right.
That's what hit me when I was hesitant on even doing it. It's like, man, 3 months,
it's a quarter of the year.
Yeah. To some people, like 3 months, no, it's nothing. And the fact that it's redirected my life too, in just a matter of 3 months, saying something, but continue. You were saying something. Yeah.
But there's something to this, right? Because you're not going to continue that life on the other side, right? I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's almost unrealistic to say, hey, you're going to continue life for the rest of your life as Exodus 90. But there's things that you're walking away with. Like I did it 3 times. I probably have one more in the tank. But each time you're walking away with a different aspect that you're applying into your life moving ahead.
Because it makes the spiritual battle real, first of all. And it shows you how to fight it through prayer, fasting, offering things up, going without. That's what builds you up spiritually. It's a physical thing that you're doing, but it fortifies you spiritually too. Jesus said, when you fast, not please, if you could fast, like when you fast. It's an expectation that we do it. It is part of the spiritual life. And that we fasted for more than food, as you know, TV, social media,
right? Clearing
that stuff out and making room for God and making room for that spiritual growth. Yeah.
I think the important part of that equation is your why. And I think for guys, and you had mentioned that earlier, like being intentional, that you're living a life of intention. And that was one of the biggest draws and the misses as I was kind of looking for something, because when I was shopping around for something, like my heart was looking for a good challenge, a good spiritual challenge. I was kind of checking out some things, and our youth minister at the time was like, oh, hey, have you heard of Exodus 90? And I was like, I haven't heard of it, but I'll check it out. So I typed it up, and I was like, oh, it rang a note that, like, the sweet chords of my heart were just like, oh, that's the tune, and the biggest leading question is like, what's the why? Like, why do you want to do this? Because I hadn't asked myself. I haven't charged my heart up to that point of like, why am I actually looking for something like this right now?
And it's so important, because if you don't have a good why, you're going to fall flat. I mean, you might complete it, but you're going to get nothing out of it if you're not going into it with a desire to achieve something.
But isn't that true in life?
Yeah.
Right? Like why am I doing the things that I'm doing? If you're not answering why am I doing this and having an answer to that, you really need to look at it and say, like, do I need to continue this? Like, what is it that I actually need to be doing with my time? Because if you're wasting your time, if you're wasting your life, you don't have good reason or rhyme to the things that you're doing, you really need to take a look under the hood and say, like, what is it that my heart is doing right now? Because if it's underfulfilled, if you're just going through the motions of whatever, you forgot what you were doing with life, you need to rip up those roots and say, all right, I need to live a life of intention. And that was something that I was squaring up with that why. I was like, why am I hungry for this? The heart of that was I wanted to be a better husband and wife, or husband and father. Because at the time I was freshly married with Ani, and I was like, man, I am in this sacrament. I want to just tear the roof off of this. Like, how do I be better at this? I want to be a better husband in the midst of this. And at the time, I think we had Izzy on the way. Izzy wasn't here yet, but she was on the way. And especially being charged up with being a young father, like, kid was on the way. At that point we had already lost Marisol. So I was like, I want to be the best husband and father that I can be. And like, how do I do that?
Which gets back to the why in your vocation too, which is a big thing. Like, all of our vocations have to have a strong why behind them. Otherwise they're just aimless. You know, your marriage can't be aimless. Your marriage you have to have a destination in mind. Obviously for the faithful, it's heaven. And without that, really not much of what you do makes sense without the why or without the aim. What are you after? And if you don't know, that's where the discernment has to come in. So,
yeah. That we just had our Brave retreat with the young adults. And that was the center point of that retreat, was talking about vocation. We did that through Song of Songs or Songs of Solomon, depending on your Bible. But that vocation, especially of marriage, you need to be all in on that. Like, as the spiritual leader, as the protector, the provider, you know, like, those are the things that you really need to show up for. Because if you don't,
it's not just going to happen.
No, it's not. And that's, I think that's one of the hardest parts of being married, is you start taking ownership of that. And if you don't have that architecture around you that I was searching for, I didn't have a means to that, but I mean, the Lord really put that right in my lap. I was like, this is okay. We're doing this. So we took a stab at Exodus, and it was a powerful thing. And you were a part of that first group, and it was awesome to be able to journey through Exodus with you, because I think the level of conversation in the midst of that was just very profound, because every week you're getting together with your brotherhood. Like, we're sitting down. For those of you guys who haven't been through that, every week you get together with your
and you can't say there's nothing to talk about.
Oh yeah, no. Because there's a lot.
How cold were your showers this week?
Yeah, you've got the cold showers, right? You've got the.
How was that birthday
fastings.
party with the cake and the? You can't hide in those meetings from anything. You can't say nope. I didn't. You would have had to have sat in your room and not gone anywhere the whole week.
and that's what I loved about it, was like, you have to be honest.
You're on a journey, literally, for 90 days with other guys.
Yes,
you're living your life, but you are on a journey. That's what it felt like going into it. I felt like Bilbo going off, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's, yeah, you're on a quest, and there's excitement.
We need to have one of these episodes where we just talk. I mean, we get Mary Grace on this too, where we just talk about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
So
it'll pop up here and there.
Oh, it's it's definitely gonna pop up. But I would actually love to do an episode just like on Lord of the Rings, and because it's adventure, right? We'll sidestep Lord of the Rings.
I'll just add one other quick thing though. When in the movie, when Bilbo asked Gandalf, like, will I be coming back? Can you guarantee I'll be coming back? And Gandalf says, no. But if you do, you will not be the same. And that's exactly like with Exodus. Like I went on it and I haven't been the same since.
Okay, we're going to go into Lord of the Rings here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're right? So they departed from their comfort zone, from the Shire.
Yeah. I equate The Hobbit to Exodus. I always have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Living your life of comfort in the Shire.
Right.
Just reading your books. You got your tea set. You're all set.
Comfy home. It's just comfortable.
Yeah.
It's protected. It's safe. And, you have your ale. You have your good time. You got your buddies. And you're living life like that, right?
But you're the same guy you were yesterday, a week before, a year ago, 5 years, but you're the same Bilbo that everybody knows. And then
Bilbo Baggins, right? Boy, wouldn't that stop being a Bilbo?
You know what's funny? Because watching it recently, like the way that Gandalf is, he's the prophet. Like he's the one who speaks. He's the messenger to everybody. Yeah. And you get that stirring on your heart in your life too. A Gandalf comes in and says, "Hey, how would you like you were the Gandalf in my journey, because you're like, how would you like to go on an adventure? It's called Exodus 90. We leave in a month. What do you think?" And I'm like, no. Kind of the same with Bilbo. Like, no. But you lingered, and then you came back and you said, "What do you think?" And that small yes, and then
you know what?
The Lord does the rest.
I'm going to quote that on the website.
Yeah.
Adam was my
Gandalf.
Oh,
Yeah.
There is no greater compliment that has come my way. Thank you, Bob. I want to get Ryan and Keith. Ryan and Keith, you're going to listen to this, and I'm coming for you.
Getting called out now.
I'm coming for you. I've got one more.
I want the stallion.
I've got one more Exodus in the tank, and even Ani said because the last Exodus that I did, she said no more, and that checked on my heart too. I was like, nah, I'm done too. So praise God, we've had Exodus running at St. Greg's. Since then, we've had various leaders step into the role. We got a new captain this year, which is going to be great. He's eager, looking to take the next generation of guys through. Awesome. And that's how it should be, right? Like, you should be sending guys into the midst, like, go lead another group. You led another group after that.
Yep.
And you read a number of years with that, right?
Yeah. And it's different when you lead it, too. And you grow in that, too, which is important, that you recognize that whenever you're in a leadership position, I'm sure you know this, that it's not a time to sit back and, like, okay, now other people, like, I got to up my game, too, for those I'm leading, because they're going to be looking to me whether I ask for it or not for direction. And knowing that, that's what helps make that you could either enter into that, or if you shy away from that, that's how leaders, I think, fall. They lose sight of that. At least what Christ calls us to be as servants, that's how you will lead, by serving. And yeah,
I'm an uncomfortable follower. So like, I haven't followed somebody in Exodus. Like, I haven't just been like the guy who's a part of the group. Side journey here for a second. So this mastermind group that I'm a part of with McGreevy and the Forge guys, one of the guys I met through this retreat that I was on a few weekends ago, local guy here in Buffalo, actually, Landry, I'm going to get you on here at some point. We actually had a great conversation, and at the end of it, spurred a new conversation of doing a father-son retreat.
Yep.
And this spring, I'm going to do that. Actually, next week, I'm going to lock in the dates and just get that puppy.
It'll be so good.
Oh man, I'm so pumped for what that's going to be.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be I want to invite the grandfathers into that as well, because it's going to be a generational retreat.
Yeah.
Wow. That's going to be powerful in ways that I haven't even measured yet. Yeah. But
when we were talking about it in men's breakfast, I mean, the opportunities there. Just got to start praying now, though, for the openness and because that's what it'll take. all parties involved.
Like, it's actually like giving me the goosebumps at the moment.
yeah.
Like, thinking about what it means to have a retreat with a father, a son, and a grandfather. To jump into this type of conversation. And on a whim, like, I was sitting there, I was kind of workshopping and sketching out. And it came just unbelievably, like, work of the spirit of just sitting there and, like, I jotted down the topics and what the layout of this retreat would be. But this came from a conversation that I was having with Landry of, it came from Iron Ore. Actually, I was telling him about that. He's like, oh, I would pay big money to do this with my son, And I was like,
and Adam on the side is like,
but I was like, I want to do this stuff with my son, like Wyatt is 4, going on 5. I'm like, man, I would love to do, like, he can't do Marcy yet. Like,
right.
That would just be.
Might do him good. Get some of that energy out.
yeah.
As far as he can go.
Right. I'd probably have to carry him down, though, like put him in the. So we were digesting that, and Landry has goes to a group that's up in the North Towns, and it's another type of men's group and Christian business owners that come together and talk shop. So today I went for the first time. He invited me to it. He's like, hey, 6 a.m. That was like a 4 o'clock wake up for me, and I was like, I'm preparing for newborn mode.
Yeah.
But I went to this thing not as a leader, but just as a follower, and just to be in, like, I don't have ownership. I don't have that role. So it's important to know when to lead, when to follow. And I know the distinction, so I don't like going into places and, like, usurping, right? Like, that's not a way to do it. But I went in there, and it was just good and kind of natural, kind of like in the Forged group of, like, I don't have ownership of that. So it's nice to just...
It's humbling.
It's humbling. It's just nice to be in the mix and to be... to allow to be led, right? And that's not a natural fit for me because, like, everything that I want to do, I want to talk, like, I want to lead. Or, like, I just want to carve. People are doing things all the time that, like, there's things already in motion. I want to do something that's new. And the only way that you're going to do something new is by doing it.
Yeah.
And that's how it was with Exodus. I was like, I'm just going to do it. Yeah. I wasn't led into it like...
Paving the way.
I wanted to do it. But today it was nice to sit back and just be led.
Yeah.
But when you're called to lead, especially with a men's group, like when you went off and you led down in at Bernadette's with it, taking that ownership, man, like that's a big deal, and you did a great job with that.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems like the natural progression that once you go on the journey and you've got stories, you got experience, it's like now I'm gonna pour that into another group of guys, and it's easy to see that with fathers and sons. As fathers, we can go to our sons and, hey man, I've been, my dad would always say, or still says, you may have forgot, but I've been on the planet a little longer than you. Always would throw that out there if I, had something. The thing is, I've been on the planet a little longer than you, so I have a few things, some experience, but yeah.
And I think that's been one of the weak spots of groups like this. Like Exodus 90, love, a lot of strength that has come from it. But we haven't had the wisdom of our fathers in the midst of it, sharing that. And they have that. And over time, they've shared certainly measures of that wisdom. But I would love to sit down with our dads and have these conversations and say,
it's a wellspring.
It is, but there's a vulnerability to that. I don't know if I would get my dad on this. I don't know if my dad would actually listen to this podcast. I don't know if I would, even if I sent it to him, I don't know if he would listen to it. Because I don't know if he would have that vulnerability of sitting down and sharing this type of intimacy, this type of conversation. And I've certainly had good conversations with my dad, but this type of thing, I don't know, but that's what I'm hoping to crack. I think with this type of a retreat is to say, like, let's go there, right? That nothing's out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
There's always the unsaid thing, right? That always kind of stays on the sideline. But I think when you have open conversations like this, that there's no longer the unsaid thing, that you get into the thing. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that thing requires healing.
Yeah. Which is great when you can bring priests along for the ride to enter into that vulnerability, offer confession. And that's what I loved with the Iron Ore retreat, that we had Father Joe with us. And that presence it really makes a difference. And I know you guys, that this was the first one where you had a priest with you, and I'm sure the others were just as filling, but having a priest is and to be with you on the journey too, like not just waiting back at camp. Oh, did you guys have a nice time? Like, he was in it with us. Like he was amongst us, which I'm sure was very satisfying for him too, to be among his flock, among his brothers. And but getting back to healing, those are the opportunities there when you have someone in persona Christi to offer that. It's a tremendous blessing.
And that has been something that was certainly a level up, I think, with this retreat. And to be at the peak of the experiences and have a priest to come on. There's not a lot of priests who are going to say yes to like scaling that mountain,
and to get up the next day and say mass on a rainy, damp campsite. Aches and all, but he did it.
That was awesome, and
I loved that.
It's very Frassati, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just like that type of experience. I mean, talk about an inspiration. Like, that guy's charged me up, but to see a priest in the midst of that, to say like, oh, I'm gonna go do that. I'm gonna be there with you, and but also be one of the guys. And he had mentioned that he's like, it's gonna be good to be on retreat and to have those moments.
Yeah.
And praise God, we had the sacraments along with us. But it was great that he wasn't just a pop-in.
Yeah.
To be on there, like in the midst
that can
of
happen.
that.
Yeah.
It can, and I've certainly seen that. And boy, the priests are so stretched right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes that's all they can give.
Yeah.
Praise God for that too. Yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges I'm facing with where the Iron Ore and even with Righteous Go, like the positioning of it, is like, where does ministry start and where does business start? And it's
a fine line.
There's a fine line, and I'm a devout Catholic myself, but I would love to reach an ecumenical audience. But to thread that
seen
needle
on your website,
but to thread that needle is tough because on one end it's like, all right, is this a general Christian business, or is this like a Catholic thing?
Yeah.
Right. And I've approached that conversation, and there's an unease there, right? Where some of the guys, I think, have stepped back from it because, this is a Catholic thing, right? But, I mean, I'm a devout Catholic. It's going to be built into the midst of what we're doing here. But the other side of that, too, is there's a general fellowship in our Christendom, right? Our general Christianity that we can share in the midst of this, that I hope to be able to bridge. Mm-hmm. And right now, I don't know if that's going to be something that causes a lot of friction or if that's something that's going to be a motion of hope. But I'm hoping that it creates the hope. And
I'd like to think it's possible, just having gone through John Eldridge's Wild at Heart retreat. I know he's non-denominational, as far as I know. So for me to enter into that, knowing his background, there were some gaps theologically, but for me, I was still like, and I think for any guy, there was enough to. There it is.
There it is. We're just stacking books here. Wild at Heart.
There's a way to still, for you to get something out of it. I guess I would say there's something for a man there. that can be grasped without, surrendering ground if you're not interested, I guess. And,
Right.
but, I think it's doable. And I think what made his so successful, what really spoke to me is he got me back into the heart, Wild at Heart.
Mm-hmm.
Cause I'm someone who's I could be very, get really lost in my own thoughts all the time and really seeking after like good arguments and truth and apologetics. I can get really lost in that. He brought me out of that by speaking to what's in the heart, and the heart is its own reasoning and its own logic. It's its own language. It's not what's up here. It's it's something completely different, which some parts have been neglecting. I feel for a while, so I really appreciated that. Bringing that in, and then merging it back into my my faith and which aren't at odds. So the hope is that there's a level of maturity on all fronts, when it comes to the gaps, when it comes to like the faith. And that's what I always hope for too, is like the common ground there it could be had. But yeah.
I'm glad you actually brought that up because Wild at Heart was a book that actually sparked my my first foray in doing better as a man, like taking ownership of that.
Yeah.
I don't remember how it was recommended to me, but somehow it came my way, and somebody gave me a free copy of it and just handed. And boy, I'm actually really blank. Like I don't remember who that was, but somebody gave it to me, and I remember in that same season I was dating a girl. I mean, it was like one brutal date, but I remember on that date because I took this girl to do some mountain biking up at Chestnut Ridge, and
Just what every girl wants.
I thought, well, I thought because she was like, yeah, I love mountain biking. I'm like, are you serious? Because I mean, do you want to go? It did not turn out well, but so long story short, I married his sister. But at the heart of it, I remember her talking about Wild at Heart, and she had mentioned the follow-up to that, which was, I'm going to blank on the name of it, but I have it on the shelf here.
Yeah.
See if I can find it. But it was with his wife. And they had, and so that sparked me because during that time, I think I was even reading Wild at Heart. I think I was in the midst of that, where I was charged up through that faithful lens of like taking ownership of my masculinity through my faith. And that was a book that put me on a course through owning that faith in a healthy masculine way. And really charged me up to want to do better. And up until that point, I was kind of like spinning my wheels in a way. I was involved with youth ministry as a volunteer, like on a core team, and I was doing that, but I was kind of lost in a lot of ways. And it wasn't until that point when I really started taking the discernment process a little more serious. Like I need to own what it is the Lord is asking me to do. And, beyond that, then I really started squaring up to the fact that, like, I'm probably being called to the priesthood through a sense of duty, but there's a desire here for marriage. And it was after that when I really started kind of squaring up to the fact, like, I need to stop running from this question and at least approach it. And it still took years beyond that of trying to figure out, all right, Lord, what are you asking me to do here? And how do I shape up as a man? How do I prepare myself? And I think because of that formed the groundwork of what iron ore is.
Yeah.
Starting with that journal and that journaling process. I mean, you have a journal here. Maybe we can jump into that next. There's formation in that. And I think God is forming us in a way to be an instrument for him. And everybody has a unique call in that. And that was the first foray in the midst of my my formation, my development, where I started squaring up to that. So if we've got some guys here who are maybe questioning what it is that they're doing in their life, get this book, because it's a great book to be able to line that up.
Yeah.
To go for the heart, right? Like that wildness of heart. Like it's okay to be wild at that heart.
Yeah.
Right. Not to be confined in ways that are self-limiting.
Yeah.
But
cuts through a lot of the lies too of what the world would like to say it means to be a man, which is refreshing.
Right.
Because there is a lot of suppression. There is a lot of, as you're growing up, be quiet, sit still. When all boys want to do is go wild,
That's like, Wyatt, right? I mean, that's my son.
Yeah.
But
it's part of us. It's in our, and we start to lose it as we get older, which John talks about. And a lot of this is recapturing it, but also, it's one thing to be a child, that's wild, but it's one thing to, have that heart, that passionate heart that is, channeling your masculinity, channeling your energy towards the good, towards the things that matter, like love and virtue, honor, duty, sort of thing. So
right. Side note before we get to journals.
Yeah.
This Sunday I have father-son time with Wyatt. Wyatt is just a wild man. Like he's all over the place. Like you've seen him in some of this action, but sometimes he's like off the walls.
Yeah.
The boy has just unbelievable energy.
Yeah.
It's tough to keep up. A lot of times we have to like discipline him into shape.
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel like I'm disciplining him into a box.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't.
Another fine line to walk.
There's a fine line.
There's got to be discipline. And there's got to be.
Right. But this Sunday, my sister is having her baby shower.
That's right.
Which is awesome. So the girls are going off. They're going to have girl time. Izzy's going. I think Katira's going to be with her mom. But that's going to leave me and Wyatt to go do something. So I'm crafting some time for us to like really go make some time of it. And I think we're going to do two things. One, there's a creek over here. And I think we're going to go take a walk down there. And I think we're going to go and splash. It's cold. It's murky. Like it's just like not the time of the year to do that. But I think Wyatt can actually handle it.
Yeah.
My little 4, almost 5-year-old. I think he's going to love that. I gave him a little hint of that today. He's like, we should go hiking. I'm like, yeah, pal, we should.
Speaking daddy's language.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, let's go, dude. Like, let's go do it. So I think we're going to go down to this creek. And we're just going to, like, throw rocks and, like, just get crazy. I don't care if it's even raining. I think we're just going to go down there, like, take our shoes off.
I feel like that's something I'm constantly feeling with work. Another thing that brought me to the retreat is I just want to get out. And for guys, we got to get out, like that call to adventure. Like we just get me out of here. Doesn't have to be for long, but I need to see real things for a little while here and just, breathe in the air. I don't care if it's cold. Just, there's times where I'm walking in my car and I'm just taking it in. I'm like, man, it's just good to just be out and just breathe the air and just, you miss it. You want it, That's why we love camping and getting out there. 'Cause it's just, got to work, got to pay the bills. There's nothing wrong with that. There's, but there's that longing to, and it really drives you. So,
I mean, not to like over abuse this, but I mean, like we are wild at heart, right? I mean, you want to go pursue like being out in nature. There's something about that wildness, right? And I don't know if I actually enjoy the Liver King or not. Like I don't know if you've seen him on Instagram.
A little bit, but
the dude's a wild man. In some ways, you're like, is this fake or is this real? And a lot of it's like, I don't know. But he talks to his crowd. He calls them primals, right? And like he's a caricature of, I think, this masculinity that we're talking about. But there's something about like just getting real and like out in nature, like picking up a rock, right? Like we're just designed to like pick up things.
Yeah.
Like pick up a rock, pick up some sticks,
throw
like
them.
get your hands
Yeah.
into some mud and just throw it.
Yeah.
Right? Like just throw it. And actually, when I was doing Wild at Heart, I had already been doing a lot of outdoor stuff. Like I loved hiking and did a lot of mountain biking. But I was making it a thing because that was kind of like getting to me. I'm like, I just want like more of that. I'd go to the ridge out in the woods. I would just get lost out in the woods. And from the fall into the winter, it didn't matter what the temperature or what the weather was. I was just getting out there. I was just picking up logs and I was carrying them. Mm-hmm. Like in my prayer time, I would just like pick up a log and I would just put it on my shoulders. I was just like, I'm a badass. You know, like I'm like, I could do this in the Lord. You know, and I was just like carrying logs through the woods. Nobody else was around.
Yeah.
But I was just carrying stuff. And I was like, I could go to the gym and you could throw around some weight. But then there's something about just like being out in the woods and like, I want to pick something up. Like, that's what I want to do with my son.
That's what's so hard because it's like, yeah, we have gyms, which are great, and it's good to work out and exercise. But men used to work, and their work was how they kept in shape. And,
when we're in the office, we're doing work, but we're not actually exerting our bodies.
It doesn't scratch the itch.
Doesn't scratch the itch.
That's why I got to get the guitar out, do something after work, because just to...
Right.
Gotta feel something, gotta do something. Like
right.
Gotta get that creative energy out, and thank God for it. Because if I didn't have that, man, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Mm. So journaling.
Yeah.
So you've been keeping a journal.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of a journal. We've been talking about journals on this podcast. Tell me about how you journal. Like what's your process in the midst of this? How did you start? Like give me the run through on how you journal.
Journaling really started like when I was in school, like taking notes. I love taking notes, but not because I was trying to remember everything. I mean, that was part of it, but I just love the feel and just of just writing, you know. And sometimes it's hard because I'm not just going to write not like gibberish. Like I want to write something out. So I'd write, when I was in school, I used to just write in my planner. I would write like song lyrics or album titles, just like short stuff, whatever I was into at the time, just because I liked writing. But I don't really enjoy writing like long essays like by hand too. But I would say, so I was given a journal maybe around like 2017 or maybe 2018. Before it was Newhouse Leatherworks from Jesse Saltarelli. He gave me a small, probably about this size, leather notebook with pages that could be refilled. And I took that, and as I started to get more into reading and listening to podcasts, especially like faith podcasts, like I would start to hear like words and phrases that would stand out to me, and I would just write them down. Then I got into this habit during Exodus 90 where we would be reading from scripture. I would read a chapter and I would just write out one verse that stood out to me and just write that down. So what I ended up with, and I filled it up, was just different little small quotes, sayings, just as it would come, something that would really speak to me. And it's fun to look back on and just to see like those little lines that they still speak to me now. And you see how it kind of builds you up. It builds up your kind of your attitude and your mentality, like the things that really, that speak to you. So that's kind of, I started with that, and then I got this this journal that I have here that it's a little light at the moment, but I've kind of, since I filled up the one from Jesse, I kind of kept it going. Like as things come, there were some moments where I felt like I needed to write like a page or two of like a journal, like almost like a diary. But what I've settled into now is, as part of my morning prayer routine, I'll open in prayer. I'll invite the Holy Spirit. I'll read a chapter from the Bible, and then I write an O and a TA. O is observation, and TA is takeaway. So the O, I do it every morning. I first do the chapter that I'm reading, which book of the Bible, and then I write down my observation. It's usually a verse. And then my takeaway is just writing about that verse. And it's funny because it started off personal, like, how do I feel about this? And now it's kind of just evolved to like really breaking it open and just expanding upon what I'm reading, and just based on, like my own thoughts, or like the way, just the way my faith is to me, or how I've come to learn and understand it. So, but it's been really good because writing, it really forces you, and you know this, it forces you to really refine your thinking. And that's very good for me because my thoughts, like I go all over the place. But when you have to actually write something down, and I experienced that in that time of prayer, like, what am I trying to say? What am I trying to put down on the page here? Because I can't just, you can't write it all, and you can only go so fast. But it's actually a good thing that it slows you down and slows down your thought process, and really, what am I trying to communicate? Like, why did this stand out to me, and why do I want to break it open and speak more to it? Why is this profound, and why is it needed today? Like, why is this message? Is there a message here that's been lost that needs to be, loudly proclaimed? So I've been doing that. I've been going strong for months now, and this is in a separate journal, not this one. You probably know what it's like to have 3 or 4 journals started, or notebooks that you've been given. But I'm batting around the idea of potentially turning it into a book, though, once I really fill it up. Which, again, I never would have thought I would do that in my life, but seeing Ryan do it, and now you've done it, having good men in my life inspiring me, I'm thinking I might be the next up to bat to try it out, putting it together in a book with refining it, make sure it's if I'm speaking about things, like I might want to run it by a priest or bishop, like to make sure I'm speaking, that I'm not misconstruing anything, I guess. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's so good. I mean, like, and just the prayer time too. Like, we just need it so bad. I know what it's like to spend years of my life just the first thing you do, you get up, is check the phone. That's the alarm clock. Okay, alarm's off. Like, wiping that out and spending that time in prayer, and that alone time, and that silent time, is just another thing that's just made such a difference. And without it, your day, is just kind of, you're floating. You're adrift. I mean, that's the anchor for each day for me, is to start off that way and to set the mind on higher things, I guess, than not getting too wrapped up or consumed in what, work has or what life has for the day, but just giving the first fruits to the Lord, and writing it out as I go. So, journaling.
Man, I love that. And you totally should. I totally encourage you to do that. And for anybody who's sitting here thinking about their journaling process, or if they should, speaking of Jesse, Jesse's actually working on the iron ore journals, right? Which is, man, they're going to look sharp.
Yeah.
They're going to have these brass tacks to them, and like it's going to be leather. Oh, I can't wait for that.
Which is another thing for a man to, get your hands on something. It's more than just typing on the screen or on the keyboard. Like, that's your font. That's your handwriting. That's your that pen to paper. And recapturing that there's nothing like it. Yeah.
When you have it in your hand,
the smell, the experience, it's
when you get yourself a good journal, right? It's something that you hold in your hands.
Not the little cheap spiral thing you got when you were a kid in school. Leather.
We're not talking about that. So you get but even like a nice lined paper, like something like that
nice
is still
paper,
good.
Not
nice
just the stock stuff that, again, like we're used to in school. Like,
no,
you need it.
but I started there, right? So, like when I was at a Life Teen camp at Cove Crest, that's when I got started. I've talked about this before, but Volume 1, which is what I just published, that was just on the just a hardcover lined paper journal, black book, right? I leveled up since then, right? I wanted to. The second one was kind of goofy. I found a journal that had like a cool design on it. It was hardcover. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But as I was working my way through that, I was like, nah, this isn't for me. I need something a little more like, I don't know, hardy.
Yeah.
And that's when I switched over into doing the leather ones. And since doing the leather ones, like, boy, it's like an experience when you sit down. Kind of matches your prose. You know, like I'm covering hard stuff in life. I want it to kind of match that. You know, I don't want like a Hello Kitty on the other side of it. Like
you feel like Bilbo right in there and back again on his big leather, you know, with the quill and
yeah. So there's process to that.
Yeah.
But you should share that, right? I'm not saying everybody should just go and publish a journal. Yeah. Pour your heart out for sure, but maybe it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But even if it's just for you, for future you to come back and turn into that, there's a lot of strength to that. But for me, my hope is that this is a catalog for my kids.
Yeah.
And like Ani's been through at least volume 1. I don't think she's read the other volumes yet.
Which is another part of the vulnerability that we talked about.
Right.
Is being able to write out what you're going through, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and then to be able to share that with others. It's some of the best books that have been written are just people sharing their story. And that's what we're called to do.
But as the faithful, as the productively faithful, like the people who are out there, even if you're not productive, you know, even if you're just sitting there in the swells of life, but there's a witness to be had in the midst of that, of saying, this is the life that the Lord has given me. And here's how I'm making the most of it. Here's my struggles. Here's my joys. Here's my hopes. Here's my failures. All of that is in the mix. When you're honest with yourself and that is part of your prayer life, that's worth sharing. We need more Christian witness out there. We're short of that today. And I think that there's so many people who are living it out that are just keeping it to themselves.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And
I know that because going on the Iron Ore retreat is every guy shared, you know, some guys I've known for a while, and they shared stuff that I never knew, and we all got a story.
Right. And what outlet do you have in it? You know, and that only encourages the other guys who are on the journey, you know, and for, and, you know, here we are talking about men stuff, but even for the women, I mean, that's encouraging for the women to see that men are stepping up into the role that they've been given as a man. You know, like this, the man that society is producing right now, boy, that's not filled with virtue. Who wants to be with that, right? And it's discouraging to the women of like, this is what men are out there. Like when I scroll through podcasts on YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, whatever, wherever the podcasts are. Speaking of whatever, the whatever podcast, boy, you listen to a lot of the women on there. OnlyFans producers, you know, like you've got a lot of feminists on there that are really just saying, well, you know, this is what men are. That's not what men are. You know, like in the witness of having a faithful man stepping in and saying, no, this is what the ownership of masculinity is. You know, it's not a false image. You know, like there's a genuine heart of what a man is, and it is wild at heart. And
that gets back to knowing your identity as a man, as a son, knowing your identity and being able to answer those questions that you brought forth, how you've been formed by great love and how have you been hardened by hard things. I think why something like journaling is so needed today, not absolutely necessary, but definitely needed, is that how you doing? Asking people that question. We don't know ourselves. We are really sucked in a machine right now of just, you know, Yeah, I might get a Facebook post out there of what I've been up to. I might, throw a picture up there, but we don't even know what's going on inside. We don't take the time to explore it. One of the best ways to do it, is through journaling. At the very least, the church, we have our nightly examination of conscience. Like, we're called to do that, to like check in ourselves too. Like, how am I doing? How am I growing? And this is one of the best ways to do it because it's concrete. You can see it. It has to come from you. It can't come from anyone else. But that inability to look back and contemplate and like to really know yourself too, your strengths, your weaknesses, and share that. Yeah, we've been deprived in society, it seems, as of late, because we don't know ourselves well enough. I didn't really know myself too well, it seemed, or as well as I thought, until I really unpacked it and could really share myself with other people too. And it's needed badly today. And I think it's starting to grow. I think, these longer form podcasts are becoming more popular, and coming out of COVID too. I think people are itching. When I'm in some circles, people are itching to talk. People are itching to start, they can't keep it in anymore, and it's natural. People are itching to share themselves, and it's good. And they need to know that they're free to do so without any judgment or condemnation or anything like that. Just open your heart up, open up what you have. That's all the Lord asks of us. Because only then can you reveal it to yourself and to the world and grow from there.
And I think it's easy to talk when it's general things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's even harder to be able to share of the things that actually matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying every conversation has to be that. Tell me the deepest, darkest secrets of your life.
Right.
Not everything needs to be that way, but you should have those relationships in your life that you can do that with. And if you don't actually have that in your life right now, pursue it, right? And I think that comes with an intention of prayer, of just asking Lord, send me some good friends in my life that I can do this with. And sometimes they're not even friends, right? They're acquaintances that you have in a select season of life that come and go. It's like Waldo, for example. Like, he was in, and then he moved to Colorado, and he was out, and I haven't been able to find him since.
Yeah.
But the time that we had together, like, was powerful.
Yeah.
And there's going to be seasons of that for whatever the Lord's will, But I think with listening is another piece. Like, I've loved podcasts for a long time. Like, I've just loved listening, like, long form. That's why I'm doing this, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just enjoy this type of conversation. I love listening to it. It's not for everybody, so everyone might be like, "Oh, I'm tapped out after 5 minutes," right? But I think there's an authenticity of having this type of conversation where this is how you get to the depths of conversation, right? And you can see somebody else doing it, like Joe Rogan. Man, he does hour, 2 hour, sometimes 3 hour podcasts. You can't do it all in one sitting. So, like, as you're on the move, you're listening to parts of it.
It's somewhere that TV has failed in a lot of ways too, because you're limited by time. But with podcasts growing, it allows hours, which is what you need. We need the time.
This
is
how
people used to debate. It's how people used to talk. You need the time. You can't do it in 5 minutes. You can't do it in a half hour. You need the time and the space and the environment to get it all out and to explore and to go into the places that we all want it.
It's a very corporatized way of having a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like, you go on the news and you have a 30-second spot with somebody who probably knows something, but you're forcing their message within a 30 to 60 second window. Okay, got to cut you off. And during the miss, you're not just letting them talk and like deliver the message. There's some combativeness in that.
And the viewer knows that too. which
Right.
is why it's starting to recede a little bit. People are putting less stock into it. It's like, all right, you got your say and got your soundbite.
Right, and that's why shows like Pints with Aquinas or Joe Rogan, where they have these sit-down conversations, have thrived because people are actually wanting to sit down and hear what a person has to say.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not perfect, right? Like this isn't this is far from perfect. Like I'm sitting here in my office, right? Like I got a little backdrop here with a map up in the back, but
Yeah.
I don't have the bells and whistles to this. But it's not about the perfection of it. It's about like how do you have the actual conversation in the midst of this that is actually worth having, because it's something you should replicate in your own life, right? Like when you listen to Pints with Aquinas, you sit there and at least for me, I'm like, man, how do I have that conversation? Like how do I have that conversation of demonic possession, right? Like how do I get to the nitty gritties of life as opposed to saying, how's the Bills game? How's the Bills game? How's the Bills game? And I love the Bills. Like, go Bills. Hey, awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I love football. There's a lot to football. But that's not all there is to life. There's so much more to life. And you get hungry for that. And you start to say, like, man, I want to explore these things. But when you say, like, I don't know anything about it, so maybe I shouldn't ask the question. Maybe I shouldn't engage in the conversation. Yeah, you should. If you have 100% ignorance on a subject, doesn't mean that you're barred from having that conversation. Jump into it with curiosity.
And if there's something that people watching this should take away from is, through Righteous Co. is you're the network guy. Like you can get guys in touch with other guys. Like if you can't offer yourself, you can certainly find, if there's a guy out there who's watching this, or a woman. I know I've been saying guys a lot during this, but Adam will set you up. He knows other people that are looking for community or just looking for, and he's able to get to know a lot of different people, and he can make a good pairing with, with networking, and because it's what you need. It doesn't have to be, podcast. It doesn't have to be, but yeah, having a long form discussion with someone is, we all crave it. We all want it. We all need it. We try to get it out, like I said earlier, with a short post every single day, trying to get the message out, but you need time to, and to learn about other people. It's not just for you. It's for the people that are close to you too. Jordan Peterson, among the many things that he said, he said, if you just let people talk for a long enough time, you realize and discover how interesting they are. Even the most boring person, if you just let them go for a long time, you'll discover how fascinating people are. We got a lot to offer everybody. So.
Like as a nobody, like my hope is that I kind of put that spotlight on people who are nobodies as well. And I'm not saying you're nobody, but like normal people.
Think you're nobody.
But like normal people who are living their life, like there isn't a tiered list of stardom of importance, right? Like some guys have been able to build great things, amazing, right? But my hope is with this podcast is that we have real conversations with real people that are
in our community
that are doing great things, that those types of people are everywhere, and that they shouldn't feel alone in the midst of the journey, because it can feel alone a little bit. And I have my detractors, right? So like just the other day, I had a guy who was at men's breakfast. He went to a retreat. It was like, one of the guys there was bad mouthing me in this, like in Righteous Co, right? And then this men's breakfast. And I was like, why? But some people are not resonating with this type of thing, right? Somehow it challenges them. And okay. So if you're the type of person that's challenged by this and saying, well, I don't know if I need that in my life, I'm good where I'm at. Okay, that's not a spark on your heart, then maybe it's something that you have already achieved, something that a lot of us have not. Praise God for that. That's amazing. That's a gift. But I have a feeling that there's a deficit in the midst of this where like you're challenged at heart of saying, well, maybe I'm not there for a particular wound or a reason in my own heart that I need to be able to rectify.
I think for a lot of people, it's people who hadn't chased their own dreams or their own, never took a chance or risk on things. I mean, that would be the clearest example to me as far as a woundedness that would lead someone to
I don't know.
put down. But
one of the things that is in the midst of this, because I think every guy has a capability and a responsibility for leadership, to lead their family, to lead in their realm, lead at their church, lead at their business, wherever. I think in the midst of this, when you take a look at what's the call and the responsibility, you have to be able to step up to that plate and say, all right, I'm going to take some ownership in this life and to be able to lead in the way that I've been given. I don't know. So at the end of the day, I think every man is called to greatness. And that isn't in the way that society puts forward, but it's in a way that I think the Lord puts forward. And there's a real dichotomy between the two of those calls.
mm-hmm.
And so for the man who is in pursuit, who is in a position of striving to be a better answer to their why, amen, right? Like, keep at it.
Yeah.
Keep going. And it's not perfect. The thing that I'm reminded of in the midst of all of this conversation goes back to a speech by Theodore Roosevelt. I forget the year, 1901, something like that. The Man in the Arena speech, where he talks about the man who's in the arena, who gets jeered at, who gets his stones thrown at him and dirt kicked at, all that kind of stuff. But he's the one who is striving. And for the guy who is in pursuit of this, who is trying to go and do great things with great cost, it's easy to sit on the sidelines and jeer and throw stones.
Because he blends in with the crowd. The guy in the arena is, as I said earlier, exposed and vulnerable.
Right.
Putting it all out there.
Right.
And how easy it is, to sit in the stands and blend in with the sea of faces and cry out. But the one who puts himself forward, even if he fails, even if he falls flat, he still is putting himself out there. He's putting forward his best effort and being, showing bravery in the midst of it and getting back up.
You have every opportunity to fail, right? And you will and can fail. That's part of it. And the idea is to be able to get back up. And that's the story of our Christian living, right? Whether you're taking that with you in your dreams, in your productivity, in your job, in your prayerfulness, it's always to get back up. Like, that's our human nature, is to fall. And you need to be able to stand back up after that fall, because you're not a failure because you fall. Like, you're just human. You're a failure when you quit,
right?
Like, when you just throw in the towel and you say, nah.
And it's that simple.
And that's a hard road to be able to cross and be able to.
I was just reading something from, I think it was from James, but it mentioned endurance and patience in the same chapter, and it really spoke to me because endurance requires a level of patience. Because you're enduring something, you haven't quite achieved what you're after yet. So it requires a patience in order to endure it, because if you're impatient, you want it now, and you might even be willing to give up something that you shouldn't in order to achieve it or get around it. But it really spoke to me because I'm all about endurance, and the mountain climb is a great test of endurance. It's, yeah, just to keep going. And I feel like people forget what it looks like to give up, or they don't recognize it in their life, like what it means to give up. I don't know if I recognize it all the time, what it means to give up, because for many of us, even those who are goal driven, we like to think that, oh yeah, I keep going, but are there things that I've given up or left behind that I shouldn't have? Because endurance is everything. That ability to keep moving on the trail, even when you're tired and when you're hurting. It's, I love it about our faith because, like I love the verses too, where it reads, Jesus loved them to the end, like just that, to the end, or to the ends of the earth. Like I love words like that in scripture. Anything about going the distance, whatever it takes, I might not be the fastest guy, might not be the quickest, or, I might not be as smart as someone else, but I'm going to keep going no matter what through it. There's always something admirable about a character like that this is what I got, and I'm going to follow it through as far as I can go, as far as I can take it. And yeah, and that's the endurance. And it's, I don't know, as I'm saying this, it's like, yeah, I wonder if there's things that maybe I have thrown in the towel on that I don't even realize yet. Because, it's hard to be with somebody who has such a defeatist, like, no, I can't do that. I'm not capable of that. And I know that because I've been that, but that's the thing we have to identify, and we have to break the agreement, something John Eldridge talks about, break the agreement we might have made, and put that aside, because we're called, as you said, to much greater things. And there are things that we put in our way without even realizing it, or we allow other people to put in our way. But the only thing I'll close with that though is we have to be able to prioritize and refine, to know our limitations, and yeah, we have to be able to strip back and really identify what is it that I'm being called to do, to make sure that we're not chasing the wrong, or going down the wrong path, or maybe avoiding anything. Because there's only so many hours in the day, as you know. There's only so much time in our life.
Right.
There's a lot of it. Life is short, but there's plenty of time to work on this, to work on our goal of heaven, to work on our marriages. It's not something we solve in a week, or something we achieve in a week or in a month, but it's the test of time, the endurance. And then we find it at the end. So, yeah. We have to know what the end is.
You got to start with the why.
Even just vaguely, and start with the why.
Yeah. Man, I love that. Well, hey, this is a great place to leave it. I think that's a good place to leave with some wisdom. The Bob wisdom.
We did make it to the top of Marcy, in case anyone's wondering.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. That was a victory.
Yeah.
Well, hey, man, thanks for jumping on here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
It's an honor.
I'm going to have you on again. Hey, look, if you're a man who feels like they don't have a community, you don't have a connection, reach out. If you need some help with that, I'm happy to help. We'll get you connected with somebody somewhere, somehow. Even if you're from across the country, you don't even know who I am. We're going to make that happen. There's some great people that would love to have you in community. And that invitation really goes out in the midst of that masculine heart that you have. And if you're searching, if you feel like you're quitting, if you've already thrown in the towel, this is that invitation to you to be able to reach out and say, hey, I actually want that deeper form of conversation. I'd be happy to connect with you even personally, but there's a lot of great guys, there's a lot of great opportunities to be able to do that. So that invitation is for you. And hey, look, there's a lot of great ways that Righteous Co is growing and a lot of great opportunities. We've got a great men's retreat coming up. Again, Iron Ore is back. It's a bit of a homecoming here in Buffalo next year. We already have the dates out. And next week, I'm going to have the father and sons retreat announced. That's going to be a big step for us. The book is on the way. I just had a conversation with the publisher today about having those samples of what the final product is. Strangely enough, the potty on the other side of that door is going off. I don't know why nobody's used that potty. So, I don't know. But a lot of great things are coming up. So, but at the heart of this conversation, if you don't have that in your life, find it. Connect with your priest, with your pastor. Connect with your brothers. Connect with your father. Connect with your friends. You need this in your life. Break out from just the usual. Because the usual is the thing that puts you in the box. If you want to be wild at heart, a book recommendation, read that. Charge up your heart. Get in a place where you're hungry. And then if you're looking for something that is beyond that, certainly Exodus 90 is a great program to be able to jump into. And a book that you should have on your shelf is the spiritual manual, a spiritual warfare manual, Paul Thigpen.
Put on the armor of God.
Put on the armor of God. And certainly having your Bible, right? Wear out your Bibles.
The truth is a sword.
Amen to that.
There you go.
So, hey, a lot of great things. If you enjoyed this, subscribe. We're growing up this YouTube channel from the ground up. This is episode 7 with Bob Turchiarelli. So we're going to keep going from here. Actually, I'm really excited because Joe Chernowski is going to be in town around Thanksgiving. I think he's going to be the next one.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and he's going to be sitting right in that chair. It'll be great because I did a podcast episode with him over Skype, and it was fine. But there's something about like that face-to-face in person thing. So it's going to be awesome to be able to have him.
It's warmed up for him.
Warmed up. It's going to be great. And we've got a whole lineup of other speakers too who are going to jump on here. We're going to have some really interesting conversations moving ahead. So thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you next time. And another note. This week is going to be the 100th edition of The Climb.
Nice.
Actually, I haven't even mentioned that on the podcast. It's something I really should. Every week I sit down, I write out essentially an email, right? An e-newsletter that goes out. And I love sharing not only the entrepreneurial journey, but to be able to give tools and tips for those in the hunt in pursuit of being productively faithful. So if that's something that you would love to have in your email box that you want to be able to jump on, we've got a great group that's following along already. I'd love to have you. Subscribe right on the website, the 100th edition, 100 editions of sitting down and writing out just some great content to fuel you up. So I'd love to have you as a part of that. Anyways, this has been a great conversation. Bob, thank you. Boy, we're almost 2 hours. Feels like nothing, but
I expected 3.
Oh, well, we can keep going.
I expected to go 3.
We'll take a little break and then
we did talk for like an hour before this.
Right. Anyways, God bless you. Keep going and keep climbing because, boy, the peak is awesome. Peak of life. Keep going. So, you guys have a great one, and we will see you next time.